Here is a rule you have heard from every fermentation account, every gut health book, and probably from me. Keep it alive. Never heat your kefir. Never pasteurize it. Heat kills the cultures, and the cultures are the entire point. In 2021, a team published a study in the journal Nutrients that tested that rule directly. They took water kefir, split it in two, and pasteurized half of it. 72 degrees Celsius for 3 minutes, enough to kill it. Then they measured which version was better at protecting the gut barrier. The dead one won. Let me tell you exactly what they did, because the details matter more than the headline. The researchers built a 2-stage model of the human digestive system. In the first stage, they fermented water kefir in sealed anaerobic reactors seeded with gut bacteria from 3 healthy adult donors. This simulates what happens in your colon. In the second stage, they took the liquid from those reactors, filtered it sterile, and poured it onto a living sheet of human intestinal cells grown in the lab. CACO-2 cells, the standard model for the intestinal lining, grown for 14 days until they formed a tight, sealed monolayer. Underneath that sheet sat human immune cells. Then they attacked it. They hit the immune side with bacterial endotoxin, LPS, the molecule that triggers inflammation and pulls the junctions between intestinal cells apart. This is the lab version of a leaky gut. The measurement is called transepithelial electrical resistance. Run a tiny current across the cell sheet. A tight barrier resists the current. A leaky barrier lets it through. Higher resistance, better barrier. Under inflammatory attack, the control cells dropped to 81% of their starting resistance. The cells treated with water, kefir metabolites, held at 89%. That difference was statistically significant, p equals 0.019. So far, so expected. Fermented drink protects the gut barrier. Here is the part that breaks the rule. They split those results by pasteurization. The live, non-pasteurized water kefir held the barrier at 86%. The pasteurized water kefir, the dead one, held it at 92%. P equals 0.014. The best single result in the entire study was a pasteurized commercial product at 93%. Heating it made it work better. Now, why would that happen? This is where the science gets genuinely interesting, and where a term you may have seen on supplement labels turns out to mean something real. The assumption behind "keep it alive" is that the benefit comes from live organisms colonizing your gut. That assumption is mostly wrong. Most bacteria in a fermented drink do not take up residence in your colon. They pass through. What they leave behind is the payload, the compounds they made while fermenting, and the fragments of their own cell walls. Researchers call these postbiotics, or paraprobiotics. Dead microbes and their metabolites still biologically active. The Nutrients study measured that payload directly. The kefir-treated reactors more than doubled total short-chain fatty acid production compared to control. 33.7 millimolar versus 14.9 at 6 hours. Propionate went from 3.9 to 10.2. Butyrate rose at 24 hours. Butyrate matters here specifically. It is the preferred fuel source for the cells lining your colon. Those cells feed on it and use that energy to maintain the tight junctions between them. The barrier that the study was measuring. The kefir also reduced ammonia, a marker of the protein putrefaction that happens when your gut bacteria run out of better things to eat. And it increased bifidobacterium, more so in the pasteurized samples. So the mechanism is not colonization, it is chemistry. And pasteurization appears to make that chemistry more available, possibly because killing the yeast stops them competing for the same substrates. The pasteurized samples produced substantially less ethanol, which supports that reading. Now let me address the question I actually get asked most, and give you the honest answer instead of the popular one. Is water kefir better than dairy kefir for your gut? Nobody knows. That study has never been run. Here is the state of the evidence. A 2026 review in the journal Healthcare identified 28 human clinical trials of milk kefir, real people drinking it with measured outcomes. For water kefir, a 2024 review in Helion went looking for the same thing. Its conclusion, quoting directly, "There is a big gap in human studies." The review states plainly that there is less focused scientific evidence on water kefir's effects on human health. The evidence base is in vitro work, rat studies, and mouse studies. That is not a knock on water kefir. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, and the mechanistic data looks promising. But if someone tells you water kefir outperforms dairy kefir for gut health, they are not reading a study. There is no such study. What exists is 28 human trials on one and effectively none on the other. If you are dairy-free, water kefir is a reasonable choice and the lab data supports the mechanism. If you tolerate dairy, milk kefir is the one with the human evidence behind it. That is the whole answer. Two more caveats on the study, because I would rather you hear them from me. First, this was in vitro. Cells in a dish and bacteria in a bottle. The authors say so themselves. They explicitly write that the findings require validation in clinical settings. A gut barrier in a plastic well is not a gut barrier in a person. Second, the study was funded by internal funds from Nestlé. The researchers disclosed it properly, the methods are sound, and the paper is open access, so you can check my work. But a company with a commercial interest in shelf-stable fermented beverages funding a study that finds shelf-stable fermented beverages work well is a thing you should know before you weigh the result. What survives all of that? The claim that heat destroys all benefit is too simple. It is not supported. Pasteurized fermented products retain measurable biological activity, and in this particular model, they outperformed the live version at the specific job of holding the intestinal barrier together under inflammatory stress. The practical version, for your kitchen. If you make water kefir at home, you do not need to treat heat as sacred contamination. A pasteurized second ferment or a cooked application does not zero out the value. If you buy shelf-stable fermented drinks and feel like you are buying a lesser product, the lab data does not support that anxiety. And if you want the version with actual human trials behind it, that is milk kefir. And it is not close. One more thing, and this one is well established rather than in vitro. The 2021 Stanford trial, published in Cell, Wastick and colleagues, put people on a high fermented food diet for 10 weeks and found increased gut microbiome diversity and reductions in multiple inflammatory markers. That is a randomized trial in humans. Whatever you conclude about which kefir to drink, the broader case for eating fermented food regularly rests on much firmer ground than any single beverage comparison. Drink the one you will actually keep drinking. That is the variable that matters most and the one no study will ever measure for you.